Hi there, welcome to Bible Slash Chat. Gus, hi.
Hi, John.
So what we do every time before this is I read Gus the question and then I start the video. There's really no time because I feel like time would make it easy for you. I want this to be difficult and challenging.
What did I ask you questions?
No, this one's for you. This one's for you. Okay, you're our local resident Old Testament scholar. Your Hebrew's substantially better than mine.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so let's talk about this. So Psalms, Old Testament Psalms, often
starts with a P. Psalms.
Correct. I see ESL is working for you. Okay, so we have a number of times in the Psalms where the writer of the Psalm compares himself to others, and he says they're the wicked.
Yeah.
I am blameless.
Yes.
For example, Psalm 73.
Yes.
You have he says Asaph, he says, I've kept my hands pure, I've walked in innocency, and he points out the wicked, and he says, the wicked are not so, right? So he talks about the wicked. So he's talking about himself as righteous, and them and others as wicked. Obviously, there's something going on there. Even for us now, like if I said, well, I'm righteous, that person's wicked, you would say, well, actually, like you're both wicked in different ways. Your wickedness is different. Obviously, you're forgiven by Christ. You're walking more in the Spirit. And we would sort of focus more on Christ in that, where those texts seem to not do that. So how would we explain those texts where you have the author seeming to take credit for righteousness and sort of pointing out the wicked in others of other people? And how does that interact with the way that we would think about the gospel in the New Testament?
That's a good question.
It's an incredible question.
I wish I had more time to think.
This comes from the young adults. It's from Michaela.
Michaela, thank you for sending questions. Look, I'm not looking at you now.
He says that in an obligatory way, yes. Good. So what would we say?
I think that what we would say, or what I would say, is that obviously the Old Testament believer and the New Testament believer are saved in the same way.
Okay, so that's
faith.
a good, that's super helpful starting point.
So they're not saved by their works,
but their
they're
righteousness,
not better, than the Philistines. They just happen to have been revealed the truth, and they believe. So they have faith. You know, we know that by Abraham, and we know that it was his faith that was counted, reckoned as righteousness.
So just putting attention
Romans 4.
Romans 4, Genesis 15:16. It was it was his faith was credited in his righteousness. His righteousness isn't something he's manufacturing, which is causing him to be.
And his forgiveness doesn't come, or again, quoting Romans 4, and Psalm 32. You know, David also. I mean, so you're having the two greatest, names in Israel's history: Abraham, the founder, David, the king, and both of them are basically forgiven. Not basically, they are forgiven, and by faith.
And credited as righteousness. Okay. Good.
So when Asaph is writing this in Psalm 73, he's not saying, "Look, I'm better than that guy over there who's rich," and I think their eyes bulge with fatness. Because they're doing so well and they don't follow the Lord. I think what he's saying is, "Look, I have this hope in my heart. They're truly believers. There's the messianic hope, and I think that is how they were saved. That's why you have Hebrews 11 filled with men and women that we would be like, I don't think you will be in heaven with me, and I guess you are.
Sure enough, Samson. Of all the ones,
Jephthah, right?
Oh man,
you're like, you killed your daughter, and yet you're going to be in heaven with me. Rahab,
crazy to think about these guys.
Not the best,
example
of morality.
Daughter.
And yet she will be in heaven with us, along with Samson and Jephthah. And I think all of that is because of faith. Right. That's what Hebrews 11 says, that these men and women, they had faith, and not just in like, I hope things get better, but they had faith in Christ,
in a coming
Messiah, and the coming Messiah who will come and actually establish his kingdom. That messianic king.
That just brings to mind like Galatians 3:8, where it says, foreseeing that the Gentiles would be justified by faith. It says the gospel was preached to Abraham beforehand, saying, and then he quotes the text about the Messiah. So you have messianic.
Well, even Jesus says that, right? Abraham saw my day and rejoiced.
Totally.
And the Pharisees were elated to hear that, right?
They loved that.
They I think they hated that more than anything Jesus said. It's like, what? You're not even 30. You're not even 40, they tell him. And you say, Abraham?
Abraham,
And then he tells them, before Abraham was, I am.
I am,
So that made him even happier. Hearing,
it's those little things. does it? So the righteousness there. So they're justified by faith. They're standing
just like
God
us.
Is the same, exactly
like
the same.
us.
And we have multiple texts that tell us that. Romans 4, Galatians 3, all those texts. So when he says righteousness, does the Old Testament theocratic economy come into place, like the Mosaic Law? Is it that they're in a sense they are keeping the Mosaic Law?
Yeah, but they're keeping it by faith differently that a lot of people that were keeping it outwardly, right?
Yeah.
These people are keeping it by faith, knowing that it's impossible for them to be.
Yeah.
And even Asaph says, I'm glad you brought that up. He says that he actually started thinking, you know what, I'm just going to do what they do.
Yeah.
And then he said, when I pondered to understand them, it was troublesome in my sight until I came to the sanctuary of God. Then I perceived their end.
Yeah.
Meaning, he didn't just come to church and he was, or the temple, in this case, probably the tabernacle or the temple.
Yeah.
Depends who you think Asaph was. Let's say the temple. He didn't just show up at the temple and say, well, all right, I guess things are going to go fine.
Yeah.
No, he actually met with God.
Yeah.
The temple is the meeting place for God and his people. So he meets with God, and he's like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like I believe.
Yeah.
I believe. And that kind of makes him, take that right turn.
Yeah. Which causes him to then turn away from wickedness.
Of course, and then drawing close to the Lord, saying, who am I having in heaven but you? And then he says, the nearness of God is my good.
Yeah.
He knows that's like the most important thing that he can do.
Yeah.
And
so we would say, yes, they're keeping the Mosaic Law. And so in that sense, they're righteous, but they're not just keeping the external law. Like Paul says, according to the law, I was found blameless. But no, I wasn't blameless because I wasn't by faith.
Yeah.
So we would say, yeah, keeping the laws is part of that because they're functionally carrying out what they're called to do, like Asaph. He goes to the temple.
Yeah.
But the actual root thing there, the thing that actually makes him righteous is faith and that credited righteousness, which then produces obedience. But that obedience isn't what he's clinging to. He's clinging to the righteousness that he gets from God.
Of course, and I think that this is one of the things where Israel didn't have, right?
Yeah.
Israel never follow
nationally
the Lord, with their heart because their hearts were not, regenerated.
Yeah.
And they didn't have the Spirit, the way we do. So that's why they were constantly trying to, that's why faith was so important in that case.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have the Spirit residing in them. They weren't in Christ and Christ in them.
Yeah.
The way that it is with us.
Yeah. The believers did. But only just a few.
But
just
they didn't have it. Yeah, it wasn't.
Yeah.
It didn't dwell. So it's really interesting to see that and to see, okay, now these people, there's not much different than with us right now.
Yeah.
If you think about it, like
in the believer, they're looking forward to Christ. That's the messianic hope. They're trusting in what's coming.
And we are the same way, right?
Yeah, we're just looking backward. Yeah, but our faith is credited to us as righteous, which is why Paul can say in Romans 4, here's Abraham, here's David, and you're like them.
Yeah.
He actually links us together with them. Yeah, that's super helpful. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Very good. Thank you so much.
All right.
I hope that answers that question. That's a tough one as well.
It is. Thank you, Michaela.
We like to spring these on Gus just to see if his Old Testament knowledge is up to par. We are paying
it
after all.
It might not be.
Well, I hope that's helpful. You can always email us questions at info@faithbibleoc.org. Thanks so much.